You are being warned right now, and there's a good chance you're about to ignore it. Not because you're careless, because your mind has been trained to mistake familiar for safe. That's how intelligent people end up trusting the wrong person, defending the very people who are hurting them, and waking up one day wondering where everything went wrong. The most dangerous threats rarely announce themselves. They hide inside routines, relationships, and decisions that feel completely normal. Here's the twist. Manipulation isn't always something another person does to you. Sometimes it's the invisible pattern that quietly teaches you to betray your own instincts. And once that pattern takes hold, every choice starts pulling you further away from the life you think you're building. By the time most people realize what's happening, the damage has already been done. But if you recognize the warning before it's too late, everything can change. And the final sign is the one almost nobody sees until it has already changed who they are. The most dangerous mistake you can make is doubting yourself before doubting the situation. Have you ever met someone who seemed perfectly kind, yet something inside you kept saying, "Be careful"? Most people ignore that feeling because they're afraid of being wrong. But that's exactly why manipulation works. Skilled manipulators rely on your desire to be polite, agreeable, and give people the benefit of the doubt. Imagine a new coworker who constantly compliments you in public, but quietly takes credit for your ideas. At first, it feels too small to confront. Then, you start questioning your own judgment. Instead, psychologists have found that your brain detects subtle inconsistencies long before you're consciously aware of them. Every time you silence that inner warning, your confidence weakens and trusting yourself becomes harder. Your intuition doesn't scream, it whispers. And the next warning sign reveals what happens when someone slowly begins stealing your energy instead of your trust. Here's a polished, high-retention version that fits your requested style and length. Sometimes, the most dangerous people don't break your heart. They quietly drain your spirit. They smile, compliment you, and act supportive. Yet every conversation leaves you feeling strangely exhausted. That's no accident. Manipulative people often create emotional confusion because a confused mind is easier to influence than a confident one. Imagine a friend who always turns your successes into conversations about themselves or makes you feel guilty whenever you say no. Over time, you begin apologizing for perfectly reasonable boundaries and second-guessing your own needs. Here's the surprising part. Psychologists have found that emotional stress can trigger physical fatigue, even when you've done nothing physically demanding. Your body notices emotional danger before your mind fully understands it. If someone consistently steals your peace instead of protecting it, don't dismiss that feeling. And the next warning sign reveals why the smallest repeated problems often predict the biggest disasters. The biggest disasters almost never begin with a catastrophe. They begin with something you convince yourself to ignore. A partner tells one harmless lie. A friend repeatedly cancels at the last minute. A coworker takes credit for your ideas and laughs it off. Alone, each incident feels too small to confront. But manipulators understand a powerful psychological principle called gradual desensitization. If they cross your boundaries a little at a time, you're far less likely to resist the next violation. Before long, you stop trusting your instincts and start accepting behavior you once would have rejected. That's how confidence erodes and poor decisions become normal. The shocking truth is that patterns predict people better than promises ever will. Never judge repeated behavior as isolated events. They're previews of what's coming next. And the next warning sign exposes the excuse that keeps countless people trapped for years. The moment you start defending someone else's behavior more than they do, you're already losing a part of yourself. Manipulators depend on one powerful psychological tendency: cognitive dissonance. When someone's actions don't match the person you believe they are, your brain often invents excuses to reduce the emotional conflict. Imagine a partner who repeatedly breaks promises but always says, "I'm sorry, it'll be different next time." You want to believe the words, so you ignore the pattern. Slowly, you stop trusting what you see and begin doubting your own judgment instead. That's how confidence fades, self-respect weakens, and unhealthy choices become easier to justify. Here's the truth: consistent actions always outweigh convincing explanations. The hardest reality to accept is often the one that sets you free. And the next warning sign isn't about someone else changing, it's about realizing that you have started changing too. One of the scariest things in life is realizing you've disappeared without ever leaving. It doesn't happen overnight. You laugh less, stop enjoying the hobbies that once energized you, and begin walking on eggshells around certain people. Manipulators often create this shift through constant criticism, subtle control, or emotional unpredictability, keeping you focused on keeping the peace instead of being yourself. Imagine a relationship where you rehearse every text before sending it because you're afraid of how the other person will react. Over time, you stop trusting your own personality. Psychologists call this self-silencing, the habit of suppressing your thoughts and emotions to avoid conflict, which can gradually erode self-esteem and confidence. If you no longer recognize the person in the mirror, don't blame yourself. Pay attention to what's shaping you. And the next warning sign reveals how waiting for the right moment can quietly keep you trapped for years. The greatest opportunities in your life rarely disappear all at once. They fade while you're waiting for the perfect moment. That's exactly why manipulation often keeps you trapped in delay instead of direct control. A controlling partner might promise, "Things will be different after next month," or a toxic boss says your promotion is just around the corner. Those promises keep you emotionally invested without requiring real change. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, occasional hope mixed with repeated disappointment, a pattern that can be more addictive than consistent rewards. Before long, you stop acting on your own judgment and start waiting for someone else's timeline. Every postponed decision chips away at your confidence and teaches you to settle for less than you deserve. Remember this: the perfect time is often the story fear tells to protect your comfort. And the final warning sign reveals the quiet transformation that determines the person you ultimately become. The greatest loss isn't losing someone else. It's waking up one day and realizing you've lost yourself. This is the warning almost nobody sees, because identity doesn't change overnight. It changes through small compromises repeated over time. Manipulators understand this. They rarely demand everything at once. Instead, they slowly push your boundaries until behaviors that once felt unacceptable become your new normal. Imagine staying in a relationship where you constantly silence your opinions just to avoid another argument. Months later, you barely recognize the confident person you used to be. Psychologists call this the foot in the door effect. Once you accept one small compromise, you're far more likely to accept the next. Every repeated choice becomes part of who you are. So, don't just ask whether today's decision feels comfortable. Ask who it's turning you into. Because your future isn't built by one dramatic moment, but by the quiet habits you refuse to ignore. The moment you stop lying to yourself is the moment your life begins to change. The greatest danger was never the warning signs themselves. It was believing they didn't matter. Every quiet feeling you dismissed, every boundary you ignored, and every small compromise was shaping the person you were becoming. But awareness changes everything. Once you recognize manipulation, it loses the power to quietly control your choices. Remember this: the strongest chains are the ones you mistake for your own decisions. You don't have to change your entire life today. Just make one honest choice your future self will thank you for. If one of these warning signs spoke to you, tell us which one in the comments. If this opened your eyes, like the video and subscribe, because our next episode uncovers a hidden psychological truth that influences your decisions every single day without you even realizing it. See clearly, choose wisely, and never ignore the quiet voice that's trying to protect you.